Hi, I'm Professor Hammond. I'm here today to talk a little bit about SWOT analysis. I know it's a term that comes up frequently in business classes, and now being in strategic management, it's another place to apply the concepts that are part of looking at a SWOT analysis and how that can help you in your decision making, especially as results to that strategic planning process. So first I want to look at the S and the W, which is strengths and weaknesses, and that's particularly looking at the internal environment and what are we good at as an organization, what do we do well, and then on the flip side, what can we improve. So some of the elements that you might need to look at is management and culture would be one of them. So how strong is your management team, and do you perhaps have a succession plan in place for bringing up new leaders in the organization? You might look at culture, and is it a culture that is effective? Is communication strong? What are the elements of culture that help your organization? What gives it that strength? Is it solid communication strategies in your culture? Do people feel like they're personally invested in their work? You might also look at that mission and vision statement to make sure that those are really clear and that those are communicated well. The resources that you have internally, and that could be both on the people side, but then also maybe there are some resources you don't have internally that are prohibiting you from being successful. So looking at it from a resource standpoint is important too. You might also look at your structure. So sometimes small organizations, they have a really good structure for a small business, and then they start to grow, and then it starts being so effective because maybe the layers get too deep or they get too wide. So looking at those strengths and weaknesses primarily, like I said, are the internal. But then you also have to look outside the organization, and that's where your opportunities and threats come in. So anything from customers, your suppliers, your competitors, looking at your competitors, the labor force, shareholders, societal changes, technology, the economy, the government, all of those things have an impact too on how strong your organization is. So let's just take, social-cultural changes. So perhaps in the past, customers have been really, honed in and buying your product, but perhaps technology has changed or attitudes have changed towards that maybe field or that industry that you're in, and maybe their buying patterns have changed as a result. So you think about people going, trending towards buying things that are maybe healthier or organic. So if you have a company that is maybe focused more on, say, processed foods, you may have to adjust your strategy based on how culture is changing and viewing processed food versus organic food. You may have to look at the labor force, and we think about all the changes that have happened with an aging workforce and a lot of layoffs, and then a lot of workers that are trying to enter the workforce and not a lot of positions available. How does that impact how you operate as an organization? What are the people available to hire into your openings, whether you're trying to grow or stay the same? There's a lot of things to think about what those opportunities and those threats are. So if we think about, let's just pick an organization, let's just say Starbucks, and we think through, what are their strengths and weaknesses internally. And maybe we would look at how they're structured and how their stores are set up. And maybe they could look at that as a strength, but they could also look at it as a weakness, and they say, you know what, we have maybe too many stores out there. We saw that, Starbucks shut down quite a few of their stores because there was kind of an overwhelming amount of stores out there. So they said, we're not using our resources. That's becoming a weakness. Our structure is kind of holding us back. And so they made some strategic changes based on looking at some of those potential weaknesses. But then they were also looking at their external environment with some opportunities and perhaps some threats. And one of the things that they looked at as an opportunity is sourcing their coffee beans and using fair trade and having that be a stronger part of their product line. And I think that's a great opportunity for them to look at and say, people are interested in this. They want to buy fair trade items. They want to be conscious about where their food comes from. And that's an opportunity for them to capitalize on and then get into their stores. They also had to look, socially, culturally, is the economy changing people's buying habits? Are regulations or the economy changing what people spend their money on as well? So maybe they change their product offerings, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just look at it as an opportunity to go into more of a niche market where that discretionary spending isn't impacted when it comes to coffee, because they've made it, a part of everyday life. So that's a really, really important process, is thinking through what makes you strong and what makes you weak. What are the opportunities that you can leverage, but then what are also those threats out there that you need to address as well? Once you determine those, you can then make strategy choices that complement your SWOT analysis. And so that's where kind of that next step happens, where you have to understand where you're at first. A SWOT analysis is like a snapshot in time. This is where we are right now, so that we can then move forward and make strategies and objectives that then help us be successful based on that snapshot. So that's SWOT analysis in a very small nutshell. And just remember to think both internally and externally about how effective your organization is, and then make strategic choices based on